Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kieran Sage. I use she, they, any pronouns as long as you are cool about it. I don't really care. So, I did not do a reading wrap up for August yet. It's October, so I missed another one, so we're gonna double up. I had a pretty rough September. Honestly, I got a new job, so I was extra busy, and in the training period of it all, I unfortunately lost my dog, my elderly dog Marley, about mid-September, and around about that same time I was also incredibly sick. So I tend to kind of like record and edit and do all of the things about mid-September, and it was just a lot. So unfortunately I did not get one out, but that's okay. I didn't read a lot in September for aforementioned reasons, so it's not going to be too long of one in comparison to like a normal one, but I did read a few books in August and a couple of books in September, so let's just hop into them. The first book that I read in August was Bridge of Souls by Victoria Schwab, which is the third book in the Cassidy Blake series. Again, I don't really want to spoil anything within a review, but kind of for the whole series, I felt like this was a pretty solid middle grade read, but it wasn't anything spectacular. The concept was really interesting, but the execution didn't really do anything for it. I just ended up leaving wishing that there was something more to the end of it, and there wasn't. I also feel like we didn't really get to explore all of the characters that well either. I feel like there just could have been something more. This was also one of the shortest books in the series, so considering all the things needed to be wrapped up, I don't know, it just felt really flat. It didn't really do what I wanted it to do with the characters or the storyline. There was just something lacking in it. I ended up giving this one 3 stars because I did not feel like we had that closure, which is really unfortunate because it's such an interesting and fun concept, and I just felt like it could have done a little bit more with what it was trying to do. The next book that I read in August was The Incandescent by Emily Tesh, and I wasn't really sure how I was going to feel going into it. It is outside of what I know Emily Tesh for, which is the Green Hollow duology, and the first book in that, Silver in the Wood, is one of my favorite books of all time, but the second book is one of my least favorite sequels of all time. It just did not live up to the first book in a dramatic way. I'm always a person that really enjoys the first book in a series, and then I tend to just kind of not like the rest of them that much. I like the familiarity of a first book in a series. So I really wasn't sure what Tesh was going to do in a more modern setting, because the Green Hollow duology is very fantasy set in ambiguous fantastical past kind of vibes. So I was intrigued but unsure. I also had a friend that had mentioned that all they had heard about this book was that it was either very good or really did not live up to any of it. It was one of those books that they weren't even sure they were gonna read because it was so back and forth. I will say the atmosphere of this book is incredible. It is very dark academia, which is what it promises. I loved the magic system. The demon summoning was fantastic, and everything about the academic side I was obsessed with. I still ended up leaving with a lot of conflicting feelings in this book, so it's the up and down is I feel that. I really enjoyed it, but I had some gripes with it as well. Dr. Walden, who is the protagonist, is also a very interesting main character because so much of the dark academia that's being released recently is very student focused, and Dr. Walden is actually a professor and lead of the security, I believe. I don't have it in my notes, but she was a professor at the very least and had a big part of authority. I think she was a dean of one of the colleges, so it was a lot. It was very fun to explore dark academia from the side of a professor. The downside to Dr. Walden is that by the time we got to the end, I didn't really feel like there was a lot of development that we got to see on page. She definitely changes from the beginning of the book to the end of the book, but it's the middle part where I wanted to see something more from Dr. Walden got overrode by a different perspective, which is a spoiler if I talk more about it, but I just feel like we did not get to see the pivotal moments that changed Dr. Walden from who she was at the beginning of the book to who she is at the end of the book, and that's really disappointing. There was also a lot of potential for the relationship, the endgame relationship in this book. There is a romantic subplot, and it was very strong at the very beginning, and I was obsessed with it. And then it drastically fell off towards the middle, and then it got wrapped all up in a neat little bow at the very end, which I did not love. I felt like there wasn't a lot of things that led to that like neat little wrapping up that we got to see on page again. Like, I wish there was something more. But honestly, I'm a world building magical system kind of person, and so I still really loved this book. I cannot emphasize how fantastic the atmosphere is, and the side characters are also fantastic and interesting, and I want to know more about them, even though they aren't really executed, or at least in the case of Dr. Walden, she's not really executed in a way that I feel like I got something out of her character. But I was completely enraptured whenever I started the book. I listened to the audiobook, and the narrator for it is fantastic and so incredibly talented. It's one of those books that I have a really hard time placing in a box because I have so many pros and so many cons, so it's really hard to like figure out where it sits for me. And another thing that you should probably know before you pick this up, simply because I saw a lot of people disappointed or angry in the reviews that I was reading after I finished, and I was trying to like figure out how I felt about it. I like to go through the Goodreads reviews and see how other people were feeling, see where like we had the same kind of feelings, especially with books like this where I have such a hard time placing it in the box. This is not first and foremost a romance book. This is first and foremost a fantasy book, and so it doesn't follow the traditional guidelines of like a romance book. In fact, it does break at least one of the very, very big rules for a romance book. And so I think that's something very important to know going into it, that it is not a traditional romance and you should not expect it to be. It is more of a, I would say almost like a character study, although it's not. There's like a plot happening in the background, but a lot of it is that mundane kind of character study and becoming a person different than you were at the beginning of the book, which is why I felt the transition from Dr. Walden at the beginning to the end was not well executed. But that's fine. I think this is overall a very confusing book for me, but also very enjoyable. And I do think it's not a 5-star book for me because I have too many gripes with it, but I don't think the gripes are enough to pull me back from a very close to 5-star read. So I gave it about 4.75, which feels like I'm cheating it out of a 0.25 extra, but like, hey, I can't do much more than that with how many problems I had with it, but it was so good. Dark Academia, Professor as the main character. It's also queer. The main character is a bisexual woman, and she talks about it throughout the book. It was a very fun time. I liked it a lot. The next book that I read in August, not September, was Tales from a Not So Popular Party Girl. These titles are very long. By Rachel Renee Russell, which is the second book, I think, in the Dork Diaries series, which is the Halloween one, and I did enjoy it. I can't even say I didn't. I love the nostalgia of it, and I don't think there's much else I need to talk about. It's just a nice graphic novel, epistolary, is that how you say it? Journal style book, and it has a lot of nostalgia for me, so I can't even be mad about it. I gave it 3 stars. I have my problems with it. It's not a perfect book. It's not spectacular, but like, it's solid, especially for a nostalgia read. The next book that I read was actually an ARC, an advanced reader copy from NetGalley. It is a graphic novel called Forgive Me Not by Mari Costa, and I loved this so much. I read it so quickly after I read The Incandescent. Like, the same day, I blasted through it. It just has absolutely fantastic art in it. It's so bright and vibrant and colorful, and the darker, more fantasy scenes are so beautifully illustrated, and I cared a lot about the characters, and I immediately recommended it to one of my friends because I think they would like one of the characters a lot. But this is a book about Forget-Me-Not, who is a human, and Aisling, who is the changeling that got swapped out for Forgive-Me-Not as a child. It's so interesting. It's such a fun concept of the princess who is no longer a princess because she got swapped out for a changeling, coming back from the Fae to kidnap the princess, which happens very, very early on. This is not that big of a spoiler. I think it might even be in the little blurb. It's so fun. The romance is very cute and it is incredibly gorgeous art. I did cry a little bit. I love them so dearly. It was great. It also had been a while since I had read something all the way from beginning to end in one sitting, so that's high praise. This is definitely one I'm going to be picking up whenever it releases on April 14th of 2026, and I think you should too. It's very cute, it's very sweet, it's very sapphic, and it's very sad. And it's a beautiful little romance set in a fantasy world. I cannot sing praises of Forgive Me Not more. The next book that I read, I actually have a physical copy of. It's a little banged up, but it is Skeleton Creek by Patrick Carman. It is, I had left a bookmark in here. It is another epistolary kind of journal style book, and it is a mystery. It is also multimedia, which is very cool. I remember being obsessed with this series and I never finished it. I remember being so obsessed with this book whenever I was younger, and specifically the third book in the series. Because of the multimedia-ness, there is a website, which, let's see if I can find the thing again. It's sarahfincher.com, and throughout the book they have like little passwords that you type in, and there's little videos that go along with it that are essential to reading it so that you can get a vibe for what the main character Ryan is talking about. And it's just so good. It's a very solid mystery. I think it is, I mean, it's a middle grade read. It's told from a young, he's not super young. He's either like preteen or like early teenage, I think. He might even be like 16 or something like that. And it is a small town mystery. They are trying to figure out the mystery of the dredge, which is a mining construction out in the woods near Skeleton Creek, the town. And the videos are very spooky. They're also very 2000s, and I love that. It's, again, just so nostalgic. I don't think I have the second book in the series. I know I have the third one, but I am excited to pick it up again. I also read through this one very quickly once I actually sat down and committed myself to reading it. I can't wait to finish the series. I intend to actually finish it this time. I never read past the third one, I think, when I was younger. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I think it gets a major bump because it's such an interesting concept of doing the multimedia thing, and to have it still be working now in 2025 when I believe it released in like 2007 is fascinating. I love it so much. 2009. And the next thing that I read was actually the second draft of my friend Alex Larkspur's newest book. It hasn't released yet, and it does not have a date to be released, I don't think, yet, but it is very good. This is The Healer Work in Progress, as I mentioned in the last video, although it now officially has a name, and it has been posted on Blue Sky, so I can say it. It is called The Need for Dandelions, and it is just simply so neat to be able to give feedback as a, I guess it's like an alpha reader. I think that's what they're called, because beta readers are after, like, you get the editing and stuff done. But it's just so cool to see your suggestions and the conversations that you've had with your friend get put into practice. It keeps getting better with every draft, and I will be honest with you, I have read the third draft, and that's the last one us alpha readers are gonna get until it goes through the editing process. So I am very excited about the publication of The Need for Dandelions. I will also put Alex's Blue Sky in the description. Alex posts a lot about their writing process there, as well as like sneak peeks, and the publication date for The Need for Dandelions should be coming out on there at some points, so keep an eye out for that. The next book that I read, I have physically, and it is The Prince and the Ice King by Amanda Mewison, and it is admittedly a very smutty book. It's not badly written by any means, but it is a little bit silly. It's fairy tale retellings. It is a million cliches all wrapped into one, and very smutty. It is filled to the brim with tropes, and I love it so much. I think the fact that it is just so well written really lends itself to being a good, like, guilty pleasure read, and I'm really enjoying it. So I'm excited to pick up the second one in this series, which is the Gemstone Kingdoms series, I believe. Yes, Tales from the Gemstone Kingdoms. It is really fun, and what more can you ask for? The only thing that I have like a complaint about in this book is that sometimes the chapters are incredibly long and they could easily be split up into much shorter chapters. That's literally just like a formatting preference. So I really don't have anything super bad to say about this book, except it's like a really smutty guilty pleasure kind of thing. On the guilty pleasure side, it is also important to note that, like, a lot of times whenever I read something that's super smutty, it's not well paced, either in the relationship or in the sheer amount of sex scenes and the way that they interact with the plot around them. But this one does a really good job of balancing important plot things and having the sex scenes not become so monotonous, so boring because they're constant. Like, there's several in here, but I didn't feel bored reading any of them, and that's important to know. I ended up giving that book 4 stars, and that moves into the September portion of this reading wrap up. I only read 2 books in September, but I did really enjoy one of them. The other one was just kind of, look at that child. He's so cute. I don't even know which one that is. They're both over there, but one of them's just in that lump over there of blanket. So the first book that I read was Dreams Lie Beneath by Rebecca Ross, which is an older Rebecca Ross book. But I think this one really solidified that Rebecca Ross is a safe read for me, but not necessarily one I'm going to be thinking about for a long time. The characters are interesting enough for their archetypes within a fantasy romance or romantasy kind of vibe, but they don't stand out to me, which makes it a lot harder for me to care about their relationship because it makes it harder for me to care about their characters. They all tend to fall a little flat, and I think Rebecca Ross has a really hard time landing, like executing the ending. She doesn't stick the landing. I think where she really shines is in her world building, which is what makes me keep picking up her books, because I love the worlds that she creates for the characters to live in. It's just that the characters don't ever have that extra oomph for me. So yeah, she's a safe read for me. This wasn't a bad book by any means. I had a good time reading it, but I did not get much out of it. This book was about Clementine, who is a magician that fights nightmares, and her town, essentially, that she and her father are the current protectors of, gets taken out from under her, essentially, during one of these nightmare fighting situations. There's a lot of magic happening all around. There's romance happening between her and one of the men who take over her town, and she goes to the city with her family to escape from the shame and all of that, and she makes a plan to infiltrate one of the men's lives as his partner for magic nightmare hunting, and it goes from there. There's so much stuff happening in this book, and the plots are always really interesting, but she doesn't stick the landing very well, I think, and I didn't care about the characters, and I really wish I did. The second book I read in September, and the second ever Stephen King book I've ever read, was Dolores Claiborne. And something really interesting about this, I noticed it after I had already read it, or after I had started reading it. This is a first edition, which is not particularly rare for Dolores Claiborne. There was a lot of them released, but Dolores Claiborne is not one of his most popular works, and I can see why. It's in a vernacular, this woman is just telling her story, and it's about 300 pages long. There's no chapters. I really enjoyed it. This copy is also very pretty. You can see the edges of it. Gorgeous, and there's like a little header up at the top that shows the moon cycles and things. It's beautiful. I really like this. I really liked this book a lot. The dialect of this woman is very familiar. It feels very familiar to Appalachian. It was fun to read, and it was spooky. This is more of a mystery than it is anything else. It's not particularly horror. This is about a woman that the entire island that she lives on believes that she killed her husband, and she's telling the story of that as she has been implicated in yet another death. I binge read this from about 10 p.m. one day to 3 a.m. whenever I was having a particularly bad insomnia bout, and I don't think I would have gotten through it as easily if I did not read the entire book in one sitting, because of the fact there are no real chapter breaks and this woman is just talking and she goes on asides, she rambles a little bit about one thing or another. But I really like how everything kind of got tied up together at the end. Like, it all made sense and it all was incredibly gripping. I loved learning about this woman's life. I did have a few complaints. They were primarily about some of the really sensitive topics that are talked about in this. Some of them aren't treated in a way that I particularly love, incest and rape particularly, but the scenes with the well will stick with me for a very long time. It is horrifying and I loved it, and I think this is a solid Stephen King book. I really enjoyed this one. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars, and I think this is not one of Stephen King's most popular books, but I really enjoyed it. And I think it's really interesting that it's not one of his most popular ones. I understand the, like, dialect problems, but anytime that I read anything that's stream of consciousness dialect, but I have a really fun time reading the stream of consciousness kind of thing like this. And I enjoy reading dialect as long as it's treated well, and it seemed very, maybe not genuine, but it seemed very true to character, and it didn't seem like it was making fun of the accent that Dolores had. I think this is a really solid read, and if you've been avoiding it because people don't really like it, I would say give it a try. I think probably the best way to read it, though, is just sitting down and binge reading it, but I know a lot of people don't like to binge read. And so those are all the books that I read in August and September. I have been picking up on my reading again in October, so hopefully we'll have a lot of really fun ones for you next month. I did plug in some new ones into my TBR for October, my running TBR as it were. For the new series one, I picked The Iron King by Maurice Druin, which I got from a Goodwill for like $1, I think. It is on my physical TBR. I thrifted it ages ago and I just haven't picked it up yet. I do know it has like a recommendation blurb from George R.R. Martin on it, so I'm interested to see what it's about. I also plugged in Stitches by Amanda Muessen, which is the second book in that Gemstone Kingdom series, into my fantasy TBR because I like a guilty pleasure read. For my general fiction, I did put in the third book of Dork Diaries, which is Tales from a Not So Talented Pop Star. I don't remember reading that one, so I'm interested to see what's happening there. And then for my series, so like the series I'm currently in the middle of, I did put down Mixed Signals by B.K. Borison, which I love B.K. Borison. I think B.K. Borison writes some of my favorite romance books, especially contemporary romances. She doesn't write anything else. I do have other like romantic-y favorites, but B.K. Borison is my favorite just contemporary romance writer. And then for my owned TBR, because I believe Dolores Claiborne was the one that was on that one, I put in How I Learned to Hate in Ohio by David Stewart McLean, and I'm interested because I don't know much about it. So I like to kind of mix it up with stuff that I don't know a lot about, and I don't remember how it ended up on my TBR or on my shelves, but I am interested. So with that, that is the whole vibe. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I gave you some books to think about, or if you just like to listen to me talk, hey, fair enough. I will see you next time. I am still currently working on a Stardew Valley video, and I have a couple of other ones that I would like to get a start on, but I'm trying to work on one project at a time because I get very easily distracted if I work on more than one thing at a time. But I believe I'm gonna really go to town on that Stardew Valley video. I've been working on the script for it, so it's very exciting. I'm really excited for whenever I actually get to the editing portion of that. That's it for my reading wrap up. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye!